Good morning, and this is Romance Live, brought to you by Avon on it's our live stream. We have 7 authors here who are going to be signing books at the Turn the Page event that starts at noon, but they're taking a good half hour to answer your questions. All of their books that are here in the store, you can order until 1 o'clock this afternoon, and the authors will sign before they leave today. So. Welcome everybody. I'm going to ask you all we'll go from left to right, and your name and your current book. Sylvia.
Hi, I'm Sylvia Day, and I'm author of the Crossfire series.
There you go.
Hi, I'm Jaci Burton, and my current book is Melting the Ice.
Very good.
Erica Bauermeister. Current book is The Lost Art of Mixing.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Dray, sometimes Stephanie Draven, and my most recent book is Daughters of the Nile.
I'm Julie Kenner, J. Kenner, and my most recent book is Wanted.
I'm Pamela Palmer, and my most recent book is Wolf Untamed, the last book in the Feral Warrior series.
And I'm Nora Roberts, but writing as J.D. Robb for my latest book, Concealed in Death.
There you go. And Jeanine Frost is snowed in, and I don't have her most recent book at hand. I will have that before we're done, but she will be checking in the chat line with the questions as well. So. Everybody is present and accounted for today. So we have a couple of questions that have already come in, and one of them is about continuing series. All of you have had books that are intertwined in some ways. Nora's J.D. Robb series started out as a trilogy, and now this is her 38th book. So I'm going to ask you all to just talk briefly about connecting books, comfort factors of going back to visit characters, ease of getting back into the story. Does that free you up to be more imaginative in the storylines? Nora, why don't you start?
Well, I know the characters really well. After 38 books, you should. And the world building is pretty much done, so there's a comfort factor in that. But the trick is that every book has to be the first book. Every book has to be fresh. And for the reader who picks up Concealed in Death and hasn't read any of the others, all the characters have to be established again in a way that works for that reader without boring the one who's read 37 other books. So it's an interesting sort of structure, and I love the series, so I'll keep doing it as long as they keep reading them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually write the Feral Warrior series is a romance series. Each book is a different couple, but it has an overarching plot for the entire series. So it was fun. I had to look with each book when I started it, where they were, what was going to happen next, and the story ends. I mean, this is the last book. It's the big climactic ending. But I do a second series, the Vamp City series, which is continuing characters, and that is a real challenge because it also is going to have an overarching plot, a beginning, middle, and end, and it's like publishing a third of a book at a time, and I tend to write books in layers, so I'm stuck with whatever I've written before. There's no going back and deciding, well, I should have added that in. It's not going in. But I love, once I do the world building, I want to live there for a while, so I love doing series.
I love series. As a reader and as a writer, I love series. I've written a lot of books in series, both the kind that have a continuing character or set of characters, and also traditional romance series where they have a different hero and heroine each time. And then with the Stark trilogy, the challenge there really was, like what Pamela was saying, it's literally a trilogy. And so the first book is the beginning, the middle book is the middle, and the last book wraps it up. But each book needed to stand alone. So that was challenging from a writing perspective to, let any reader come in and come in anywhere in the trilogy and still know what's going on.
When I'm writing about Cleopatra's daughter, and I've written 3 books about her, I know her voice so well that she just starts telling it to me. So that's a very comforting experience. When I'm writing naughtier books, like It Stings So Sweet, this was a series of stories that are interrelated. And so it is a series. It's sort of a novel in 3 parts. But I really enjoyed sort of weaving everything together. So I think series are great, probably for the same reason that I like TV more than a movie. I get to know the characters for a longer time. So that's why I love them.
And I had no intention of writing
sequel. When I wrote The School of Essential Ingredients, it had 8 students and their teacher in a cooking school. Each student had their own chapter. I thought that was plenty. And I thought that it was done, but as soon as I was finished, people started writing me saying, what happened to this character, this character? And I would get these ideas in my head and I would just say, go away, I'm not writing another book. But they became fairly insistent. And what actually happened is a completely new character came in, and the book started with that character, and then he needed a human catalyst. It ended up being one of the characters from School of Essential Ingredients. So I ended up sort of sliding into it backwards. And because I wasn't planning it, I had all those issues of, okay, I've already set up this world, I can't change things, I have to work with it, I have to make it interesting for the people that have read the first book but make it stand alone. But what is it they say about Ginger Rogers doing it all backwards and in high heels? That's kind of how it felt.
I had originally intended my play-by-play sports romance series to be a 3-book series. And it was 2 brothers and a sister, and I'm now on book 7. It happens that way. Sometimes readers get invested in characters, and I expanded it to cousins and then a group of guys in college. You know, you get invested in the characters. I love the characters. I love sports. So, and I go back and I revisit some of the characters from previous books. It's fun, it's exciting, it's romantic, it's sexy, and it's crazy to try and keep track of everything and all of these characters and who's been with who and who is related to who and what sports they play. But I've never had so much fun writing a book series before.
Okay, Sylvia?
Well, I have, of course, different kinds of series. You know, I have series that follow one couple over multiple books, and then I have series that picks up with a new couple every time, you know, the series starts. I think part of the question was about ending the series, and whether, you know, you want to go back and revisit them. Typically, you know, when I get to the end of a series, I feel that sense of closure. I mean, that's why I'm closing the series, and it feels right, feels good. I feel like they're where they need to be, and, you know, and then I can let them go. Now, as the writer, do they continue to visit me and see me, and do I? Yeah, absolutely. You know, does that mean I'm going to write another book about them later on? You know, it's possible. It's, you know, it's one of those things where you kind of say never, because it, you know, if it really comes together and the story's there, then you might want to do that. But, you know, I do have series where I've ended it and I'm like, this was absolutely perfect the way it needs to be. And then there were some series where, you know, I anticipated ending at a certain point and realized that, you know, I wasn't close enough to that end point to do it. And then I had to extend it with future books. So, you know, I mean, really it's the character story, and I try to tell it the best way that I can. And when they're done, they're done. And when they're ready to go, I keep going.
There you go. Well, the questions are coming in thick and fast, so I'm going to try to ask as many as I can. One question, Nora, is did you really start writing in a snowstorm like we just had this week? I happen to know that's true.
Yes.
But you have more chocolate now, so you were more set for this.
I always stock up on chocolate in the winter now, because that was the kind of desperate. 2 preschoolers, 3 feet of snow, no morning kindergarten for a week. So
that drives
and
somebody.
no 4-wheel drive, which I now have.
There you go. So you're set,
Yeah.
and the kids are gone. Pam, real quickly, 2 sentences. How'd you start writing?
Daydream that got too big for my head. I had no idea I wanted to be a writer, but I was always a daydreamer. So I
Good.
started writing.
I like that answer. Julie?
Always wanted to be a writer, ended up practicing law, and really needed that creative outlet.
So you wrote and practiced law at the same time before you quit
Yeah.
your day job, as they say.
Exactly.
Okay, there you go. Stephanie?
Well, like Julie, I started out as a lawyer, and then I decided if I was going to tell lies for a living, I might as well write fiction.
Well done. Erica, I'm not sure if you can follow that one up, but go ahead.
I was a nonfiction writer and took a cooking class, and we killed crabs with our bare hands the first night, and I was so shocked and appalled and exhilarated and oddly liberated, and I thought, what would happen if you put a bunch of strangers doing this? And all of a sudden the book fell in my head, and there you go.
There you go. Well, good. Jaci?
I dabbled in writing here and there during my earlier years when I was working in the corporate world, but it wasn't until I married my current husband that I told him I used to do that, and he said, you should try that writing thing again.
And there you go. Very good. Sylvia?
I knew I wanted to be a romance novelist when I was 12 years old. And then, you know, one afternoon, my kids were down for a nap, and, you know, all the dishes were done and laundry was done, and it was like, this is it. This is your time. So I sat down and started writing.
There you go. Well done. A specific one for Jaci. Are you going to have more Hope books?
Yes, there are currently 3 Hope books. The first one is out. 2 more are scheduled to be out this year, and hopefully more are coming.
There you go. Sylvia, are there any more Crossfire books?
Well, there's 2 more. Of course, we've got 3 right here: Bared to You, Reflected in You, and Entwined with You. The next book is Captivated by You, which will be out this year. And then we have number 5, which will be the last book, and that will be out this year as well.
There you go. Okay. Nora, are we ever going to know who the candy thief is in the in-depth books?
If it fits, but once you know, then the joke's over. Once that's revealed, I know.
Right.
But it's too much fun to baffle Eve. So.
Okay, well then that actually leads into a question that also ties back into all writing connecting books. What do you do when readers feel that they need to see, especially when you've created worlds that have gotten larger in the in-depths? I happen to know when Nora gets mail, people want to say that book didn't have enough of Feeney, let's say. What do you do when your readers get so invested in characters that they're constant demand, they want to see everybody in every single book when it's just not possible? Does anybody want to start with that one? I'm not gonna.
I ignore the reader because she's not the writer.
Okay.
And she's not the character. So I ignore you. If you have the reader on your shoulder, what about this reader over here is telling you the exact opposite thing? Which one do you listen to? So I ignore all of them.
Okay.
That's my way of doing it.
Anybody else?
I agree with Nora. I mean, I started out with the 2 brothers and the sister, and they are the favorites of this series for my readers, and they always want to see more of them, but I've moved on, and you cannot let the reader dictate your books for you. I love my readers, but I am the writer. You always have to listen to your writer voice.
Yeah.
Okay. There was a specific question about Peabody, but it can all could talk to a question like that. Was Peabody a one-off character? Has there been a character who's just come on board on stage and then you thought, oh, I've been waiting for you, where have you been?
Peabody was a one-off. I just wanted a uniform who would have a little bit of something in Glory and Death, and she would do something. And then I thought, no, she's too good. She's too interesting, and I had never, and then, of course, she's essential. Several characters in the In Death series were one-offs that just were too good to stay that way. She was the first.
Okay. Anybody else want to share characters who surprised you, swept you off your feet?
It happens to me frequently. I've got a character in the Stark trilogy that came in just because I needed a security type dude, and he's actually going to be a hero in a spin-off book now, and he just sort of introduced himself and said, hey, I'm here. And it's happened in probably 70% of the books I've written where characters will just snag some screen time.
Okay.
I'm picking up on that as far as where they say that I'm here, and I consider myself more of a narrator than a creator. The characters come on the page and I write them, and then if they just take on a life of their own, I let them do it. I think if I try to keep them in a box or try, I call that author intrusion, and I think you can read that in a book. It starts reading awkwardly if you try. I mean, to a certain extent, you are the person who's in charge of what's happening on the page, but on the other hand, there's something very organic that happens in the creative process, and if they want to run with it, I let them do it. It's fun for me. That's where I get, kind of the ooh, this is getting interesting. And it's like, to a certain extent, maybe I had something to do with it, but sometimes it just feels like it just happened, like there's a magic there.
Sometimes your best characters for future books come that way, when your secondary characters or minor characters, come develop a life of their own.
Okay. There's the requisite, I'm going to not ask where do you get your ideas, but is the requisite, and I do think everybody has an interesting answer to that. What would be the best piece of advice you give to someone who is planning on a writing career? I'll start with Sylvia.
I say to write 3 novels before you even think about shopping anything. There's kind of, I have some people who will email me and say, what, I've written the first 3 chapters, and, can you give me advice on how to get an agent and, a publisher? And I'm like, hey, you're not there yet. I mean, you just can't be there 3 chapters into your very first book and say, you're ready to be published. When you write 3 novels, I think 1, I mean, the hard part is getting to the end of a book. The next harder part is starting the next book and then getting to the end of that one. And until you've done it 3 times, you don't know that you can do it. It's really premature. Of course, you get that sophomore slump too, where the second book is really hard. So, and I think by the time you get to the end of the third book, 1, you know how long it takes you to write a book, and 2, you have some confidence in the fact that you can do it. You can start one, you can finish one, and 3, you have a better idea of what your voice is. You know what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and at that point, I think you're ready to start, you know, looking around and bringing other people on board on your team. But those first 3 books are really essential to finding out who you are as a writer.
I think Sylvia is exactly right. I tell people 3 books too. And there's another problem, not a problem, but the situation today is you can self-publish immediately. And I think as somebody who didn't start out writing, my skills by the end of 3 books were 500% better than when I started. I think by the end of 3 books, you've acquired so many more skills. You can go back and look at that first book and you may be horrified, and they can be revised. Books can always be revised, but once you put it out there, it's out there for good. So get the skills first.
Nora?
Right. Stop talking about it. Stop saying you're going to do it.
Right.
Stop making excuses. That's it. Right.
Just so everybody knows, this is the excitement of being in Boonesboro. Fire alarms do go off every once in a while. Anybody else have some advice for aspiring writers?
I would say the add-on to that is read.
Yeah.
I mean, the first book I ever did was a guide to books called 500 Great Books by Women, and we had to read thousands of books to pick 500. And I learned as much from the books that didn't work as the ones that did. I mean, I learned to read like a writer, and I think that is a really critical skill.
And you should write what you enjoy reading.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Why would you write something you wouldn't read?
Exactly.
Oh, but this is popular right now.
Yeah,
It doesn't
yeah.
matter what's
Mhm.
popular right now. Write what you love to read. That's so important.
Plus, by the time you finish the book, something else is going to be popular
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
Right.
Trends are called trends for a reason.
Yes.
Okay. Sylvia, what are you reading right now?
Well, I'm reading Rita Award books, so
Oh,
I
yes.
can't talk about what they are.
Okay, beyond the responsibility of being Rita judges. Okay, so what are you reading for pleasure that is just, what was the last book you read just for pure enjoyment?
Nalini Singh, her latest book, which was Archangel's Legion, her latest book in her Guild Hunter series, which I happen to be a massive fan of. Yes, she went back to, you know, an original couple that was there earlier in the series, and I was so excited to be with them again. It was like old friends.
Okay. See, writers feel the same way as readers. Jaci, what have you
I'm
read for
reading
pleasure?
the last book I read that wasn't a Rita book. Probably Shannon Stacy's Love a Little Sideways. She writes contemporary romances, and they're fabulous.
Okay. Erica.
The Snow Child. It's a sort of fairy tale set in Alaska for grown-ups. And it is just lyrical and beautiful and mystical, and I loved it.
There you go. Stephanie?
I think I was the last person in the nation to be on board. I just finished Bared to You by Sylvia Day, which I loved.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want to ask her how she started writing? No. Julie?
I'm actually rereading the In Death series. I'm in Creation in Death. Creation in Death right now.
Okay.
I do get the titles mixed up. I have to say.
So does she. So, Pam?
I'm currently reading Ian Rankin's The Falls, which he's a Scottish author, and I'm writing a book set in Scotland, and I'm enjoying it.
Okay. Nora?
Just finished Dr. Sleep, Stephen King's follow-up to The Shining. It's brilliant. Just brilliant.
That's on my list.
There you go.
No.
So, wide variety of things for people to choose from beyond books that you all are writing. So, one more writing question. Do you get into a point in every single book, is it the same place where you're like, I just don't know if I'm going to finish this? I mean, I've heard there's, like, for some people, there's that chapter 14, 17, where you're like, I can't do that. Does anybody want to take that one?
Every single book.
Every single book?
I will stare at a certain page at a certain time and just think, I'm never going to finish this book. Never going to finish it. Can't do it. But, you know, I think every writer gets that way where you just, it's called with me, it's the middle of the book. The middle of the book is always terrible, and I just stare at the page and think, there's nothing there. What happens next? I have no idea. But you push through it. You have to, you know?
Absolutely.
I feel like I don't let myself do that. I will beat it. I will wrestle it to the ground. I will pummel it into place. It will not defeat me. Even sure, you stare and I don't know what I'm going to do, but I will figure it out and I will win.
Yeah, I will write junk.
I will
you know,
write junk,
I will
and then I
write
will
blah
fix the
blah
junk.
blah,
Yeah.
and then I'll fix it. Yes.
Yeah. Blah 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 is exactly it. Yeah. But you get the words on the page and then you can fix it.
Exactly.
Oh, see, and I'm just the opposite. If I get into it and I write myself into a corner, I can't get out. It'll take me 2 weeks to get out. So I walk a lot, and thank God I live near the beach because it helps.
I'm just looking through a couple of other questions because Jeanine is answering some questions from readers that are online, so I'm just going through that. There is a self-pub question, and you all can take it if you want, that is it easier writing in an age of self-publishing? I know some of you have had experience, some of you have not. Anybody want to take that question? I don't think writing becomes easier personally.
No.
But
That's what I was thinking in my head.
If it was easy, then it wouldn't be what it is. It wouldn't be important. It's like baseball, you know. If everyone could do it, it wouldn't be special. And not everyone can write. Everyone can publish, but not everyone can write.
Okay.
I will say that for me, it made it it took some of the pressure off me for writing the third book. Originally, Berkley contracted for the first 2 books in the series, and I knew there were 3. And I was very nervous about how I was going to wrap up the second book in such a way that readers would have the whole story. But knowing that self-publishing was an option and that this book would be available to readers no matter what, sort of freed me up to do what I originally intended to do. In the end, Berkley loved it and they bought the third book as well, so all worked out. But I think at least that part was made easier for me for self-publishing, being available.
Good. Sylvia, I have a specific question for you. This is from Becky. Sylvia, I'm really loving the teasers for Captivated in You. Can you give us an idea of when it will be coming to us? I'm wearing out my audiobooks, listening to them in my car on the way into work every day. You make the drive more bearable.
Oh, well, thank you. That's a huge compliment, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I can't because we haven't scheduled the last book, the next book, which is Captivated, but we haven't scheduled it yet. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So I know a lot of people are like, when is it coming out? I can tell you it'll probably be out before the middle of the year. I can definitely guarantee it'll be out in 2014. But where I'm at in my writing schedule and the way I'm contracted with my publishers is as the books come in, then we start talking about how the book's going to be released and what time it is. And it's usually about a 6-week time frame from the time that the book gets turned in until the time it comes out. However, we're concerned about releasing the 4th and 5th books as close together as possible. So rolling from one into the other and then having both of them come onto the schedule means that I have to be almost completed with the 5th book before we can do that. So that's why. So, when you ask the question about when the book's coming out, it's not as if we have a release date and I'm just not sharing it. It's not scheduled at this time.
Thank you. Nora, I have a question. I've actually never seen this one. So this is from Mary Jo. Nora, Somerset is such a great character. His description reminds me of your husband, Bruce. Did Bruce inspire that character?
Oh, no. No. He really didn't. And I don't actually see Bruce in Somerset. Not my particular image, but that's the great thing about reading is that they're in your head as a reader, not necessarily what the writer has in hers.
Gotcha. All right, we have about 5 minutes more, so I'm going to ask whatever questions show up here. This is from Jaci, from everybody. What is your favorite moment in the writing process? Thinking of the idea, starting the first page, dotting that last period on sale day or some other time.
The last period. Definitely reaching the end is such an exhilarating experience. It's a natural high, and that's actually what propels you into opening the next document and starting the next book is you get to the end and you're like, yes, a glass of wine, some chocolate, go to bed, get up the next day, open the book, and it gets you through to the end because you want to feel that feeling of exhilaration again. There's nothing in the world like it.
I do a literal get up out of the chair, wiggle the butt, jump around, happy dance at the end of every book. It is the best moment in the book, the end.
There you go. Erica?
My favorite is when I'm really into the writing, I don't know what I'm writing, and then I go back and read it, and it's as if someone else wrote it. And lots of times I'll learn something, and I'll think, oh my God, I had no idea that I knew that. And learning from the back of my brain to the front of my brain is the most fascinating thing I can imagine.
something like that. Stephanie?
When I'm writing romance, I like to say my mission is to write very smart books for very bad girls. So when I get to the point in the writing where I feel like this book is shaped to that mission, that's when I feel really exhilarated and happy.
There you go.
Like Erica, I like those times when you're so into it that you go back and read it and it's almost like, wow, it's like this magical experience. I love that.
I love starting a book. It's like opening a brand new present. Everything's possible.
Yeah, that is a great feeling, and then there's page 2. I actually love all of it, even when I hate it, and both of that is in there. But why do it if you don't love it? Because it's just too hard otherwise. So I really love all of it.
Okay, that sounds good. Someone has asked a question. I'm going to just answer this verbally. Linda has asked the question if your J.D. Robb novels are still in print and available. And yes, they are, Linda, so you can call this bookstore if you want to. When you are starting to introduce a new character and they aren't on the page yet, how do you narrow down who they are and what their voice is? If there's one person who wants to answer that question, that's going to tie into the showing up on the page. But I guess their question is, how do you shape the voices of your characters?
I have no idea.
It just downloads. I put my fingers on the keyboard and it just comes.
Yeah,
I think the more you write, the more you get into the story, the more the characters shape themselves. At least for me, I don't plot in advance, so I just start the book and they reveal themselves as I write the story.
And it's always, for me, it's always as I write the story. I'm not walking around thinking, what am I going to do in this scene? Oh, I guess I'll have the girl from the drugstore come in and say, hey, I'm writing and there's this girl from the drugstore and where did she come from? But she's got a really loud voice and she's going to show up in the book.
Right.
So it's always fingers on the keyboard. There's some sort of connection there.
Exactly.
And I think it's different for different characters. Some characters I really have to consciously think about how to shape them, and other characters just come to me. I based a character on Clara Bow, and she came into my head and took over just like the real Clara Bow took over on the screen.
There you go. Since this is a book signing and you all love books, is there anything that you are in particular looking forward to from other authors that is coming out this year? Anybody think of anything or you're just so immersed in your work?
I'm always after the next John Sanford, and I'm sure he's got one coming out this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Sylvia, you mentioned Nalini Singh.
Her Guild Hunter series, I absolutely love it. The Alpha and Omega series from Patricia Briggs is also another one that I look forward to, and the In Death series. And I've actually deliberately not gotten all the way caught up because I never want to get to the point where I can't there's always one waiting for me to read it. So those are my 3 go-tos, always, and I'm glad that I can look forward to them every single year.
Okay. Anybody else?
I'm a big fan of Nalini Singh as well. I read her side Changeling series, so I can't wait for the next one to come out. I'm like 45 books behind the J.D. Robb series.
That's okay.
But which is great for me because I can, pick them up, read 2 or 3 books at a time.
Right? Yeah, you can do
and
a
I know that
binge.
I can do
at the end.
I can do a huge binge and know that there are more books for me to read, so it's awesome for me.
Good. Julie, there's a specific question for you. I absolutely love the Stark trilogy. Thank you so much for the adventure. Just finished Wanted and can't wait for Heated. Love you. It's actually a comment that
Thank
they
you.
love you.
That makes it so easy on me. Thank you.
I know. This is going to be, it's 11:44. We have one more question. Nora, there is a question that it's kind of doomsday thinking, but do you have an end book in case something happens to you before the end of the series?
No. I'll be dead and I don't care.
I think on that note, we are going to close off. We'd just like to remind everybody who's watching that you can order books until 1 o'clock, and the authors will sign and personalize before they leave today. And Jeanine Frost's latest book here is Up from the Grave, and we do have copies here of that as well, and we'll make sure we get a copy of it to you. I think that we are just about done. there are many more questions writing-wise that are coming in that we just don't have time for. So I think we are just going to thank you all for being here, and hope you all have a good rest of your Saturday.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. Bye.